The funeral was already in full swing when I slipped into the back pew, a good 20 minutes late. Just like always, I was an afterthought, relegated to the cheap seats while the rest of the family, my Aunt Delilah, my cousin Sawyer, even my younger sister Sophia, were front and center playing the grieving relatives. My father, Darrell, wouldn't have had it any other way. He was a master of subtle digs, and my entire life had been a masterclass in feeling like I didn't quite belong. I'm Nicole, by the way. I'm 32, and I just watched my father get buried. I barely heard the eulogies, my mind replaying a lifetime of slights. Sawyer, 2 years older than me at 34, had always been the golden child, the son my father never had. Every achievement, every milestone, Sawyer's name was whispered with pride. Mine, usually followed by a sigh or a dismissive wave. Then came the will reading. Moises Harvey, the family attorney, a stiff man of 40 who always seemed to be judging me, cleared his throat. He droned through the usual legal jargon, then got to the good stuff. Sawyer inherited the house, the old Ford pickup, and a key to an undisclosed safety deposit box. My Aunt Delilah, Sawyer's mother, 57, and perpetually disapproving of me, beamed. Sophia, 29, shot me a sympathetic glance from her seat beside Delilah. Finally, Moises held up a small cream-colored envelope. "And to Nicole Fleming," he announced, his voice flat. "Your father leaves this." He handed it to me along with the funeral seat card. I opened it discreetly, my fingers brushing against a $1 bill and 3 cents. $1.13. The final perfect insult. I excused myself, needing air, needing to scream. In the quiet of the vestibule, I pulled out the bill again. That's when I saw it. Taped under the dollar, almost invisible, was a small tarnished brass key, and tucked beneath the bill, in my father's unmistakable, spidery handwriting, a note, "Ask about the night of the fire." My breath hitched. The night of the fire, the old farmhouse, years ago. The one I was blamed for. My father, Darrell, always so controlling, so dismissive. He'd left me a breadcrumb, a challenge. My hands trembled, but a strange calm settled over me. This wasn't just $1.13. This was a message, a final twisted test, and I was about to pass it with flying colors. I pocketed the key, crumpled the note, and walked back towards the main hall, not to my seat, but straight for the podium. The will, I realized, was a farce, and the show was just beginning. The murmuring stopped the moment I reached the podium. Every eye in the room, from the distant relatives to the few strangers who'd come out of obligation, was fixed on me. Moises Harvey stood frozen, his mouth slightly agape. Aunt Delilah's face was a mask of furious disbelief, and Sawyer, my charming cousin, managed to look both surprised and slightly concerned, a performance he'd perfected over the years. "My father, Darrell Fleming," I began, my voice clear and surprisingly steady, "was a man who valued truth, even if he had a strange way of showing it." I paused, letting that sink in. He just left the wrong person in charge of his legacy. Aunt Delilah, bless her, was the first to react. "Nicole, what are you doing? This is a funeral, not a circus." Her voice was a sharp whisper, but it carried. Sawyer stepped forward, a hand raised in a placating gesture. "Nicole, please. This isn't the time or place. We're all grieving." His eyes, however, held a flicker of something else. A warning. I ignored them both. "You all just heard the will. A house, a truck, a safety deposit box for Sawyer. And for me?" I held up the $1 bill and 3 cents, letting everyone see the pitiful sum. A few gasps rippled through the room. $1.13. A final insult, perhaps. Or perhaps a clue. I let my gaze sweep over the faces, lingering on Sawyer's. My father was a complicated man. He knew things. Things some people would rather keep buried. Things about secrets. about betrayals, about the night of the fire. The air in the room thickened. I could feel the shift, the sudden prickle of unease that wasn't just about my outburst, but about the unspoken history I'd just invoked. The old farmhouse fire, years ago, the one everyone conveniently blamed on my recklessness. Delilah's face paled, and Sawyer's carefully constructed calm cracked, a flash of genuine fear in his eyes. Some truths, I continued, my voice gaining strength, have a way of resurfacing. My father may have been silent in life, but he left me a voice, and I intend to use it. I gripped the podium, my knuckles white. This will, as it stands, is a mockery, and I refuse to let it stand. I will claim my legal rights, and I will reveal everything my father wanted hidden. The room erupted in whispers. The family fractures, long simmering beneath the surface, were now laid bare, and I, the overlooked outsider, was about to blow them wide open. The fallout from the funeral was immediate and brutal. My phone blew up with angry texts from Delilah, confused messages from Sophia, and a few veiled threats from Sawyer. But I didn't back down. The first person I called was Emerson Gonzalez, my childhood friend and now a sharp-as-a-tack legal advisor. She's 37, 5 years older than me, and has always been the one person who truly got my family's messed-up dynamics. "You really went for it, huh?" Emerson said, a hint of admiration in her voice, when I met her at her downtown office the next morning. "The night of the fire comment? That's a deep cut." He left me a note, Em. Ask about the night of the fire, and a key. I explained everything, showing her the dollar and the small brass key. Emerson leaned back, tapping a pen against her chin. "The old farmhouse fire. I remember that. Everyone blamed you, said you were reckless with those fireworks you had for your birthday. But your dad never really pushed it, just let it hang there. It always felt off." She looked at me, her eyes serious. "There were rumors, Nicole. Insurance money, a big payout. And Sawyer was always around your dad's business back then. That conversation solidified my resolve. My father's study, locked for years, was my next target. The spare key I'd found wasn't for a safety deposit box, but for his old mahogany desk in the study. I waited until the house was empty, then let myself in. The air was thick with the scent of old paper and dust. Inside the desk, beneath stacks of financial statements and old tax returns, I found it. A worn leather folder. Hospital bills from years ago, for a local burn unit. Old letters between my father and an insurance adjuster, discussing discrepancies in the farmhouse fire claim. And then, a series of photos. The burned-out shell of the farmhouse, and several close-ups of a specific corner, showing what looked like accelerant residue. Tucked among them was a receipt for a large sum of cash, dated just days after the fire, signed by Sawyer. Insurance fraud. It hit me like a punch to the gut. Sawyer hadn't just been involved, he'd profited. Meanwhile, Moises Harvey, the family attorney, started calling, his tone increasingly stern. "Nicole, I strongly advise you to reconsider. Challenging a will is a lengthy, expensive process, and frankly, it's not a good look for the family." He sounded like Delilah's mouthpiece. Sawyer's calls were less subtle. "You're playing with fire, Nicole," he'd hissed in one voicemail. "Some things are better left buried." But I wasn't scared anymore. I was furious. As I sifted through the last few items in the desk, under a false bottom, I found another small envelope. Inside, a tiny piece of paper, folded multiple times, in Daryl's handwriting again, but this time a series of numbers and letters, almost like coordinates. And below it, a single word: backup. A backup safety deposit box. One only I could access. My father, the ultimate chess player, had been planning this for years. With Emerson's help, I officially filed a legal challenge to the will. The paperwork cited undue influence and suspicious circumstances surrounding the disposition of assets, hinting at the insurance fraud without fully exposing it yet. The documents I'd found in my father's desk were enough to get the ball rolling, but Emerson warned me it was just the first shot fired. Delilah, predictably, went into overdrive. She called every relative, every distant cousin, painting me as a greedy, unstable opportunist, trying to disgrace my father's memory. "She's always been trouble," I heard her tell my godmother, Virginia, 60, over the phone, though Virginia remained tight-lipped, a subtle doubt in her eyes. Sophia, my younger sister, was caught in the middle. She called me, her voice laced with concern. "Nicole, are you sure about this? Aunt Delilah is saying awful things. This is tearing the family apart." "It was already torn, Soph," I told her, trying to keep my voice steady. "Dad just put a Band-Aid on a gaping wound. This isn't about money for me. It's about truth." Sophia remained cautious, a pragmatic streak always running through her, but she didn't outright condemn me. Emerson, meanwhile, was a force of nature. She dug into Daryl's financial records, the ones Moises had conveniently overlooked. It didn't take her long to find a pattern: significant cash withdrawals from Daryl's personal accounts, dating back years, often coinciding with large deposits into accounts held by Sawyer and Delilah. "This isn't just about the fire, Nicole," Emerson said, pushing a stack of bank statements across her desk. "They've been siphoning off his money for a long time. The family meeting was Moises's idea, a desperate attempt to resolve this amicably before it got messier. It was held at Delilah's house, a tense gathering of about 15 relatives. Sawyer sat smugly beside his mother, radiating an air of injured innocence. "Nicole, perhaps you could explain why you've chosen to drag this family through the mud," Moises began, clearly trying to mediate, but leaning heavily towards Delilah's side. I didn't mince words. "I'm here because my father was defrauded, and so was I. Sawyer, perhaps you can explain these." I slapped down copies of the insurance letters, the burn unit bills, and the receipt for the cash payout, all pointing to his involvement in the farmhouse fire and the subsequent insurance fraud. Sawyer's face went white for a split second, but he recovered quickly. He even managed a scoff. "Those old papers? Nicole, you're grasping at straws. That receipt? That was for a car I sold to your dad, remember? He helped me out after I totaled my old one. And the fire? Everyone knows you were playing with fireworks that night. I was at a friend's house, miles away, with witnesses." He looked around the room, his charming smile back in place. "She's always been dramatic, hasn't she? Trying to blame everyone else for her own mistakes. He'd gaslit me in front of everyone, twisting the facts with a plausible, albeit false, alibi. My blood boiled, but I held my tongue. This was just the beginning. Sawyer's gaslighting at the family meeting only fueled my fire. He thought he was so clever, twisting the narrative, but I knew I had the real ace up my sleeve, the backup safety deposit box. The coded note from my father had led Emerson and me to a small, unassuming bank branch on the outskirts of town, one I'd never known my father to use. The bank manager was a pleasant, elderly woman who recognized my father's name. I presented the key and the specific code from the note. After verifying my identity, she led us to a private room. My hands were clammy as I inserted the key and twisted the lock. This was it, the real legacy. Inside the box, nestled amongst layers of tissue paper, were several items. First, a small silver locket, tarnished with age. My mother's. I remembered her wearing it when I was a little girl. A pang of unexpected grief hit me. Then, a stack of old photographs. Pictures of my mother and father, young and smiling, before the bitterness set in. And a few, chillingly, of a younger Sawyer and Delilah, looking far too pleased with themselves outside the burned-out farmhouse. Beneath the photos, a thick envelope. Inside, an unsigned typewritten confession. It detailed how Sawyer, with Delilah's knowledge, had intentionally set the farmhouse fire to collect a hefty insurance payout, which they then split with my father, who was struggling financially at the time. The confession explicitly stated that they had planned to blame it on my recklessness with fireworks, knowing my father would protect his golden boy and cover it up. My father had kept it, a silent sword hanging over their heads. But the real bombshell was a set of mini cassette tapes. There were 3 of them, labeled simply Sawyer and Delilah, Moises, and Daryl. Emerson, ever prepared, had a portable player in her bag. We listened in stunned silence. The first tape was a recording of Sawyer and Delilah, their voices clear, discussing the plan to set the fire, the insurance claim, and how to deflect suspicion. The second tape was Moises, the family attorney, advising them on how to navigate the insurance claim, clearly aware of the fraud. And the third was my father, his stern voice, confronting Sawyer and Delilah years later, threatening to expose them if they didn't repay him for their ongoing financial drain. He explicitly stated he'd kept evidence in a safe place, just in case. It all clicked. My father hadn't just been controlling. He'd been playing a long game. The $1.13, the note, the key. It was a twisted test. He wanted me to be loud and smart enough to find the truth, to expose Sawyer and Delilah myself. He'd given me the tools, but I had to be the one to wield them. As we packed up the evidence, my phone buzzed, an anonymous text, drop the case, or risk another accident. My blood ran cold. They knew, and they were willing to go to extremes. The anonymous threat didn't scare me into silence. It just made me angrier. They wanted me to back down? Not a chance. Emerson, seeing the fire in my eyes, agreed. We go public, she declared. They want to play dirty? We play dirtier. We strategically leaked select pieces of the evidence, the unsigned confession, snippets from the audio tapes, and the financial records Emerson had uncovered, to a local investigative journalist known for digging into cold cases. The story broke a few days later, a front-page expose titled Family Feud or Decades-Old Fraud. It didn't name names directly, but the details were unmistakable. A prominent local family, a suspicious farmhouse fire, insurance fraud, and a contested will. Public opinion, which had been swayed by Delilah's smear campaign, began to turn. The whispers changed from greedy Nicole to poor Nicole, framed by her own family. The legal authorities, spurred by the media attention and Emerson's official filings, began their own investigation. Detectives contacted me, then Sawyer, then Delilah. Emerson worked overtime, ensuring I was protected, advising me on every interaction. She knew this was going to get ugly. Sophia called me, her voice tight with emotion. Mom's trying to bribe me, Nicole. She wants me to sign an affidavit saying you're unstable, that you're making all this up. And what did you say? I asked, holding my breath. I told her no, Sophia said, a new strength in her voice. I told her I wouldn't lie for her. I told her I believe you. It was a huge moment. My pragmatic sister, who always tried to avoid conflict, had finally chosen a side. She even offered to testify to my character, refusing Delilah's frantic pleas and veiled threats. The pressure mounted on Sawyer and Delilah. Their carefully constructed lives began to crumble. Sawyer's business dealings were put under scrutiny, and Delilah's social circle evaporated. They were cornered, and cornered animals lash out. It happened at the old family house, the one Sawyer now technically owned. I was there with Emerson collecting some of my mother's old belongings when Sawyer burst in, his face contorted with rage. You ruined everything, Nicole, he screamed, his eyes wild. He lunged at me, his hand reaching for my throat. Emerson, quick as a whip, stepped between us. Sawyer, don't, she yelled, pushing him back. He stumbled, then turned his fury on her. Just then, 2 police officers, who had been discreetly watching the house due to the ongoing investigation, rushed in. They'd heard the commotion. Sawyer, still yelling threats, struggled against them, but it was useless. They cuffed him, his face a mask of disbelief and pure hatred, and let him out. He was finally arrested. The legal battle that followed Sawyer's arrest was brutal, dragging on for months. Emerson was a whirlwind, meticulously building our case. The audio tapes, the unsigned confession, the financial records, Sophia's testimony, it all painted a damning picture. Sawyer and Delilah, facing charges of insurance fraud, embezzlement, and obstruction of justice, saw their assets frozen. Moises Harvey, implicated in the cover-up, lost his license and faced disbarment. The family name, once synonymous with respectability, was now a byword for scandal. The climax came in the courtroom. I took the witness stand, my heart pounding, but my voice steady. I recounted years of being marginalized, the constant comparison to Sawyer, the blame for the farmhouse fire that had haunted my childhood. I spoke about finding my father's note, the 113, and the desperate, twisted hope it had sparked. I described the fear when I found the anonymous threat and the relief when Sophia finally stood by me. My father, I said, my voice thick with emotion, was a man who believed in justice, even if he couldn't always deliver it himself. He left me a path, a test, to uncover the truth he couldn't speak. This isn't just about money or property. It's about reclaiming my name and exposing the betrayal that nearly destroyed our family. My testimony, raw and honest, resonated with the jury. The tide had turned completely. The court, after weeks of testimony and deliberation, delivered its verdict. Sawyer and Delilah were found guilty on multiple counts, and in a stunning civil ruling, the judge awarded me the house, all of Daryl's remaining assets, and full control over his legacy. Justice, it seemed, was finally served. But the most devastating reveal came during sentencing. New evidence, uncovered by investigators after Sawyer's arrest, showed the true depth of his depravity. The farmhouse fire wasn't just about insurance money. Sawyer, desperate to secure his place as the favored son and to inherit everything, had deliberately orchestrated the fire, knowing I would be the easy scapegoat. He'd planned to frame me, to cement my father's disdain for me, and ensure his own future. It wasn't just greed. It was a calculated, malicious act designed to erase me from the family picture entirely. My father had known, and in his twisted way, he'd given me the means to fight back. But the cost was immeasurable. The dust settled slowly, leaving a stark landscape. Sawyer and Delilah were ostracized, their names synonymous with disgrace. The family, what was left of it, fractured beyond repair. Blood ties, once a flimsy excuse for loyalty, were severed. Sophia and I, however, had found a new, stronger bond, forged in the fires of betrayal and truth. Emerson, my fiercely loyal legal advisor, had not only won my case, but had helped me navigate the emotional wreckage. I moved into the family home, the house Sawyer had coveted, the one that was now legally mine. But it wasn't a triumphant homecoming. Every creak of the floorboards, every shadow, seemed to hold a memory. I walked through the rooms, reliving the costs, the trauma of being blamed, the lost years of a strained relationship with my father, the gaping rift in what I once called family. Justice was served, yes, but it tasted cold, like ashes. I found myself sitting in my father's favorite armchair in the study, the same room where I'd found his hidden notes. The silence in the house was heavy, broken only by the rustle of leaves outside. My father, Daryl, had been a master manipulator, even in death. He'd given me the tools for revenge, but he hadn't warned me about the hollowness that would follow. I pulled out a pen and paper, the urge to write overwhelming. My last word, I thought. A letter, not to anyone in particular, but to the ghosts of the past and to myself. To whomever finds this, or perhaps just to the silence, Revenge. It's a powerful motivator. It can drive you to uncover truths, to fight battles you never imagined. I wanted to reclaim my dignity, to expose the lies, to prove I wasn't just the reckless daughter. And I did. Sawyer and Delilah got what they deserved. Their world imploded, and mine, in a way, was rebuilt. But the satisfaction is real, yes, and so is the loneliness. The family I fought to expose is gone, and the one I thought I had was never truly there. My father, in his twisted wisdom, taught me to be loud, to question everything. He gave me the means to tear down the empire built on lies, but he couldn't give me back the years, or the innocence. I sit in his chair now, the legacy bearer. The house is mine, the name is cleared, but the silence is deafening. Karma's justice is cold comfort. My own loud brain, once a source of shame, is now the voice of this family for better or worse. I just hope I can find a way to make it better. I folded the letter, leaving it on the desk. The house was mine,